Japan Makes Me Scared, a podcast to the chilling realm of Japanese horror stories. My name is Junpei, and I will invite you to the mysterious world of Kaidan, exploring spine-tingling experiences that have haunted Japan. Konbanwa minasan. Welcome back to another episode of Japan Makes Me Scared. I'm Junpei, your host, and I'm gonna share various horror, scary stories of Kaidan in this podcast. I know it's a bit sudden, but let me ask you this. I feature a bunch of Japanese urban legends in this podcast, but you guys like them as well. I really hope you do, because that is one of my favorite genres of Kaidan. And if you haven't tried it, please check out some previous episodes to find out more. I'm in my 30s now, and I can still remember reading urban legends posted on a website as a kid. You know, this kind of common childhood memory of my generation. I remember when I first read about Hashuk-sama or Kisaragi Station. I was quite excited by how the story was told and the content themselves. And going back to my parent generation, there were also some interesting urban legends, such as Hanuk-san in the toilet and Kuchisake Onna, the slit-mouth woman. And going back even further, like several hundred years ago, there was various yokai folklore as well. You know, the classic sort of Kaidan stories. It is kind of impressive, isn't it? Many urban legends have been told throughout Japan since the days even before the internet. By the way, it might sound a bit silly to say this, but just to be honest, when I hear urban legends, you sometimes wonder if they're real. Well, I think this is a natural reaction, because urban legends are like a collection of rumors, so to speak, and even if you trace them back to their origin, it is often not clear who the first person to experience them as. But on the other hand, I used to think this was just an urban legend, but it might actually be real. This kind of opposite case can also happen, right? Today's story is about the mysterious Kaidan story that connects an urban legend and reality. Right, let's move on to the storytelling part. Episode 38, Woman Behind the Slide. The original story is from Yurian Retriever. Yeah, I know, it's quite, let's call it, a fancy name, isn't it? She's a famous Japanese comedian, and she also joined America's Got Talent in 2019, so some of you might have seen her somewhere already. She usually does funny stuff, and doesn't really look like the type who talks about scary stories, but there's one story that caught my attention, so let me share that today here. From here, I will describe I as Yurian herself for convenience. That was around April 2013, I think. It was the same year I made my start as a comedian. I was living in Osaka then, and one day, 3 senpais, senior comedians, and I decided to go to Hanami. Hanami is a Japanese word for kind of small gathering party, where people talk and drink while looking at beautiful flowers. Hanami is a particularly popular activity for Japanese people, especially when the cherry blossoms are in full bloom, around the end of March to the beginning of April. At that time, the cherry blossoms were blooming in a nearby park, so we decided to bring snacks and drinks and have a Hanami party there. You know, we're all still young and not rich, so we often work late into the night. Then it was already 1 AM when we got together after work that day. So we all got on our bikes and headed for the supermarket near the park. 2 of my senpais were a little ahead of me, and the other one and I were going a little slower behind. That supermarket was just beyond the park, so we have to pass the side of the park on the way to that supermarket. When we were passing the park side, I was casually looking inside the park. There was a slide, and one woman was standing behind it. I knew it was a woman because I could see her from the shoulders up over the slide. Her hair was long, black, straight, and I could also see a long white skirt-like thing around her feet. But she was looking backwards from my side, so I couldn't see her face. And that woman was, for some reason, jumping around all the time. And I didn't get what she was saying, or could be singing, but I could hear her saying something. You know, it was a late night park, so usually no people were there. So to be honest, I thought it was kind of creepy. But you know, Osaka is quite a unique area. The area where there are a lot of weird people, I would say. So I didn't pay that much attention to her, and just thought, she's just weird, eh? And I went straight past the park, and then arrived at the supermarket. When we came back to the park after buying drinks and food, the woman was already gone. I thought maybe she had moved somewhere else already. So I talked to the other senpais like, "Hey, the woman from earlier, do you think she went away and disappeared somewhere else?" But their reaction was like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" So I asked them for more details, and it turned out that the two senpais running in front of me had not seen the woman, but the other senpai running with me said he saw the same woman as I did, and I even heard her voice. But I was like, it's just, you know, you can't be unaware of it. We are all passing the parkside in the same way at almost the same time. The slide also should have been inside, and above all, that woman was looking weird, jumping and saying something. There's no reason why they couldn't have seen it. So I was rather a bit annoyed, saying, "How could you possibly miss it?" And I took one of the senpais behind the slide and explained to him, "That woman was standing right here behind the slide." But when we got there, I realized something. The senpai was about 180 cm tall, but the peak of the slide was much higher than his head. You know what I mean? If I could see above the shoulders of that woman, it means she's crazy tall. I would estimate at least 2.45 meters. The senpai also said, that can't be right. Maybe she was sat on a slide? But considering that the white skirt around her feet was also visible, it was more natural to think she was standing on the ground, not sitting on a slide. Such a giant woman was jumping in the park in the middle of the night, singing or speaking something. Both my senpais and I were so terrified, and we ended up going home that day without Hanami. Sometime later, I joined an event as a comedian. Part of that event was about telling scary stories. And that's when I told a story about my experience in the park. Then, one of the people at the event, who was familiar with scary stories and urban legends, said, "Isn't that #summer?" That's what he said. #summer, alternatively called Hachishaku-sama as well, is a character that appears in Japanese urban legends. Shaku is an old Japanese way to measure length, and when converted to centimeters, it is approximately 30 cm. And since Hachi means number 8, Hachishaku is approximately 2.4 meters. As the name suggests, #summer is an unusually tall, monstrous being. It is believed that if you got liking by it, you'll be killed within a few days. According to the urban legend story, Hashik-sama used to be sealed in a certain area of Japanese countryside, but it was broken, and her sightings have been reported all over Japan ever since. Since I haven't died for 10 years after that, I don't think I got liking by Hashik-sama. But when I saw her, the thing that I thought was Hashik-sama, she was looking backwards. And that could be a reason I was saved. I mean, she wasn't aware of me yet, probably. But what if she was facing in my direction, and I saw her face? Or even worse, had eye contact with her? I still feel kind of crushed with fear when I think of that possibility. Oh Shimai, thank you very much for listening to the story. How'd you find it? If you already listened to episode 3 of my podcast, you know what Hashik-sama is and how she looks like. For those who haven't, please check that out, then you'll be surprised at how close the woman in the story looks like to Hashik-sama. And what I found crazy there was the fact that Yurian didn't know the Hashik-sama story until she talked about her experience in the event. If she knew the story, it could be possible that her subconscious affected her perception and kind of changed that from what she actually saw to what she thought looked similar to, which is obviously Hashik-sama. But she saw that crazy tall woman without any knowledge of Hashik-sama in advance. It's a tiny bit of point, but I personally feel that this is the big part of what makes her story sound true. Anyway, since the first Hashik-sama story was told in 2004, the story is scary indeed for sure, but honestly, it's been still one of the interesting urban legends as an entertainment. But with today's story, doesn't it make you feel like Hashik-sama could be real and still exist in somewhere in Japan? Yurian spotted her in Osaka, and Osaka is obviously not the countryside at all. So Hashik-sama could be in any big city, like Tokyo as well. Between urban legends and real life, there's a fascinating spot that stores up some excitement. And I hope you can feel that with today's stories as I do right now. Anyway, do you have any theories on this story as well? I've got a Discord channel where anybody can join and share thoughts and theories. Of course, I'll be there as well. I'm gonna leave the link in the description, so please join and enjoy the interaction if you would. Also, I've got my own website, japanmakesmescared.com, where you can find a transcription of the story, more detailed information about the episode topic that I couldn't get to in the podcast, and more visual images related to the episode as well. To reach my website, you can simply type Japan Makes Me Scared in your browser or check the link in the description. Just one more thing, this podcast, Japan Makes Me Scared, is available on almost all popular podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or Amazon Music. Also, if you push the follow button on the app of your choice. First of all, for me, it'll be a huge support and motivation, and for you, you will not miss notifications for future episodes. So please consider following my podcast as well. Alright, we're getting close to the end, so let me say one thing. Arigatou gozaimasu again for listening to my podcast, Japan Makes Me Scared, and sayonara for more Japan thrills next time. Bye!